We're starting early today, because that's still being on time, right? So, if you guys don't know me, I'm the closing manager at Home 61. I'm Carlos. I'm the person that pretty much makes sure that your deal doesn't get canceled. It's up to compliance. I try to preempt everything that you guys have in regards to making sure everything goes smoothly, stress-free, both for yourself and our client. And today's workshop is our second part of closing buyers, closing the deal. All right. First and foremost, I also want to thank everybody that made it. I really appreciate it. You know, because that means you guys want to learn. You guys want to actually get some nuggets here, so you guys can apply to your career. Keyword: apply. So you guys can continuously come to these workshops, but if you don't apply it, it's really worth nothing. All right. So again, today is the second part of the closing buyers, part 2. We're going to focus on closing the deal. Now, last 2 weeks ago, Tim did the workshop on closing buyers, which is finding the house. This is at the point where we found the house, right? So what do we do next?
Give it offer.
All right, so today's agenda, just to put expectations out there, this is what we're going to go over with, okay? So what happens next when you find the buyer's dream home? In doing so, we're also going to go over the transaction process. This is something that we took from the Florida Realtors Association, the best practices. However, every deal is different, but more than likely, if you follow the practices, it'll be a smoother transaction. Also, we're going to talk about negotiation points and tips. This is going to be the nuggets where you can actually leverage and benefit what your buyer needs to get to close the deal. We're also going to go over contingency dates and tips, how to keep on track on that. And within the actual offer, when the contract goes hard or soft until, you know, it actually goes in, but either way, you have it under contract, moments of negotiation, and more importantly, preventing cancellation. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about enhancing the buyer's experience, both leveraging us as Home 61 and our team and yourself, of course. So again, what happens next when you find a buyer's dream house? All right, so we found a home, now what? Let's get serious and get in the game. Put the offer out. This is one of the most scariest parts for the actual buyer, because that means we're actually in it, right? Great meme, simply because this is the emphasis where if you do not put an offer in when you already want it, you have to sleep on it, chances are the person that saw it yesterday already slept on it and just put an offer in the same day that you saw it. Okay, this becomes a sense of urgency. So this is more of a sales tactic where you can kind of just emphasize that if you love it, let's put an offer now. More importantly, you already have educated your client, knowing that there's other contingencies that once you have the offer in, it gets accepted, they can technically sleep on it for the first 3 or 5 days because you have to put an escrow deposit, right? Yes, everybody agrees?
Yep.
Awesome. Next slide. All right. This is the diagram that I took from the Florida Realtors Association, and this is what they consider the best practices when it comes down to the real estate transaction. Okay? We're going to focus on the buyer side here. Ideally, what you would like to do is have your client, when they're interested to buy, talk to a loan officer, or 2 loan officers, or 2 banks. More importantly, the more the merrier, because you get options. Okay? This also kickstarts the ability to figure out what they can qualify for, which then emphasizes a little bit easier what you can offer. Okay? You found the dream home, present the offer. Okay? And at the same time you present the offer, most good listing agents will be like, where's the escrow? Show me that you are actually interested and serious, and at which point you already have communicated with the title company, because as a good agent, you would have already educated your client how the process works. The escrow deposit is just a good faith deposit showing that you're serious, that pretty much there's some financial risk on there because you're putting it with the contract. At the same time you put the offer out, ideally the seller's disclosure would be attached on MLS. If it's not, ask. Ask the listing agent, where's the seller's disclosure? This is going to help you emphasize more when you get to this point of purchase negotiation. Because there might be things there that you do not know that might change your opinion on what the cost, what the best purchase price would be. Okay? And then, of course, there's a purchase negotiation aspect, the back and forth, countering. And then once you guys agreed, the sale agreement is executed. This is the first half of the transaction. So we're gonna focus on this for right now. Next slide. Negotiation points. These are the points in which you would negotiate your contract. This is, again, before it gets executed. Purchase price. How do you do that? Simply, first you gotta make sure that your client is qualified in some sense or form that they can afford it. Okay, that's their limit. On the purchase price itself, it can also be considered the market price, right? Because maybe they can afford a $500,000 house if they're an investor, but you know, the house is worth $300,000. You do that by doing your research. Okay, this is where you create the value as an agent. You know the market, you come out with the reports. This is what I suggest as a professional real estate agent is what it's worth. However, how much more are you willing to pay for it because you want it at a certain price, or you really want it because of the competition? Therefore, you know, it all depends on the market, right? If you see that you go to open house, there's a lot of people interested, or the listing agent tells you we already have a few offers, best and less than best offer, then you have to now negotiate and see how much does the client really love this house, right? The other point of negotiation point will be the initial deposit amount. This is basically when you do a purchase, when it's residential, it's typically around $5,000 to $10,000. However, if it's an aggressive market, if you really want to get serious with it, then you start putting a higher initial deposit. Most investors will do that to pretty much buy out or pretty much show this how serious they are and kind of kill the competition with that. Another point of negotiation is closing date. Most sellers choose to close as soon as possible. Now, it's sometimes a lot more difficult when it's a financial deal than a cash deal, but ideally, 30 days, which is cutting it real close and make sure that everything happens right, is what can be typically done to close the property. On the vice versa, let's say the seller themselves are looking to purchase another property and they need a little bit more time, that's another negotiation point. Maybe they say, well, I gotta move, but in 2 months. Are you guys willing to close in 2 months? Yes, are you willing to give me a $5,000 credit? See, it's a give and take. Another point is as a cash buyer. If you're a cash buyer, you get to leverage that. A seller will look at that first because there's not that contingency or the financial contingency of getting a loan. Days of inspection. Ideally, always do an inspection. The less days that you have, the better for the seller. They look at that offer, a little bit more seriously because there's a less chance that you're going to back out. And if you do back out, it's sooner than later, right? The way you establish a shorter days of inspection is creating a team. Having a trustworthy home inspector that you know that you can call and they'll be there the next day or 2 days, depending if it's a weekend or not, right? That actually helps facilitate the deal a little bit more faster. It also gives you a point of negotiation. And of course, seller's contributions. This is additional to like the additional terms at the end, right? Like say the client is willing to, at the closing, give credit because he doesn't have the money to or willing to, but give credit to the buyer. You can put that in the actual contract, right? So seller's contributions will be another point in the contract that you can negotiate. Next slide. Negotiation tips. All right. It's kind of thorough, but it's pretty simple. You guys are professional, okay? You guys are in this real estate industry for a few things, and one of the values that people hire real estate agents is because you guys have the ability and the capability to negotiate better than them. These are tips that you can foster that, right? So fostering cooperation through working together towards common goal. At the end of the day, you're a buyer agent, you're a seller agent, we both have the same goal. Close a deal, get paid, all right? As soon as you make that clear with them and you play ball, they will play ball back, okay? That also refers to being polite to the person, being a little bit more aware of the situation that they are holding the cards initially, right? Until you start asking questions, which is the second part. Discover motivation by simply asking questions to the listing agent. A lot of people miss that part. The questions are very simple. Hey, I see you've been on the market for 380 days. Why so? They start telling you a little bit more about it, right? You use that as ammo to leverage your negotiation. On the other end, they'll tell you they're having a divorce, so now you know the sense of time of urgency. They're actually moving to another country, therefore there's a time of urgency. You start picking up all these nuggets just by asking that you can actually start leveraging in those negotiation points that you had before, okay? A lot of agents don't do that. It's a simple thing to do, just simply ask. Anticipate flexibility by setting realistic expectations. This is what you talk to your buyer about, okay? Under promise, over deliver, okay? Anticipate flexibility. So this is pretty much how it kind of goes. You're gonna have your buyer, they probably have never done a deal, but you have to consider that this is a negotiation point, and we gotta understand that we might not get all 5 things, I can get you 2 or 3, okay? In which case, you already have this anticipation with your client that when they come back to the counter, they'll be more realistic to be like, okay, that sounds acceptable because I was already aware that I'm not gonna get all 5 points that I wanna get, okay? This is just a little bit more understanding of the process when it comes to countering. All right, the first round of countering, buyer and seller are both focused on buying and selling the home. They want the home, they want to sell the home. Let's talk, right? The second round is typically boils down to money. At the end of the day, that's the number one reason why negotiations happen. What's the number one point of negotiation is the purchase price. At which point, if you get to round 3, it starts becoming personal. It becomes like who has the bigger ego, who's the better negotiator. Try not to get to that point because that's usually where it gets dicey, and then people start, having a bitter taste in their mouth, which then boils down towards through the transaction. Okay, so to prevent round 3, check your ego out the door. Shorten negotiation and avoid arguments. Okay, avoiding arguments is simply trying to buffer, have this kind of ego of I am better than you are. At the end of the day, that does not actually provide any leverage. You actually look worse than you started off with, and in doing so, most people lose their cool, which takes me to the next part. Keep calm and carry on. Minimize the emotions. I know it's going to be emotional. We're human, okay? But minimize the emotions, and remember, it's a business transaction, okay? It's a business transaction. By minimizing the emotions, you allow yourself to be more focused of what the numbers are and where you need to get to, okay? Again, keep your cool. As an agent, you can't get caught up in emotions, even if you're desperate for a deal. There's no power in desperation, okay? A good salesman on the other side will smell that, and they'll pounce, and they'll try to just run you over, okay? This is why this part of the emotions aspect of it is very important, okay? And at the end of the day, whatever you guys negotiate, get it in writing, okay? Get it in writing. Could be an email. Email's not very solidified, but definitely on an addendum, get it in the contract where both people sign, get it in writing, okay? Because I've had times where agents oh, they told me they're gonna add this, or they're gonna fix this. It's it's not on the contract. They're not obligated to do it, okay? Next slide. Now it takes us, we got the contract, we got everything in writing, takes us to the other part. So it's got executed, it got accepted, right? In which case you're gonna start going through the process, which I just noticed is a process missing here. Does anybody know what's missing here? As you already have executed the contract, there's one big process that's not on there. Anybody? You got the loan application process, you got the title search.
Is that escrow?
Escrow, you could have done it already before, right? Nobody?
Inspections?
Home inspection, that's right. Unfortunately, it's not on here, which, again, I did not do this. I pulled this from the Florida Association of Realtors. Inspection, which should be kind of over here in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So it would be inspections, loan application process, the title search, the contingencies, depending on the loan application or the title search, need to be met before we have closing docs. Okay? Once you have the closing docs, typically they're set 3 days before your closing date. Within those 3 days, review closing docs, make sure everybody's getting the right numbers, review the property 1 or 2 days before the closing. Okay? This is very important because it just happened to us where they didn't check the AC. The AC got busted 2 days after closing. Yeah. it was leaking, which I believe it could have been something in the case of that it can be easily fixed. But again, those little things could be something that your client who just purchased the property that has a leak in their AC would be like, hey, my agent didn't do the full thorough walkthrough. And then it kind of shows, lack of service, okay? And of course, once you get to the walkthrough, sign papers, commission gets paid, and we're closed. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about this process here, okay? The second half. You're under the contract, contingency dates. Very important. Important dates, effective date. This is where everything starts. This is day 0. This is the day that everybody signed the contract, all initials are signed, both on the contract, and ideally, if there's a condo rider or any addendum that you guys check off, that's kind of the date that you're gonna start off. Day 0, okay? Next important day will be your deposit date. This is where you would put the extra deposit, typically $5,000 to $10,000, unless you want to have an aggressive buyer that wants to put like $93,000, which for me it's an ego push, but I don't suggest it because that's also going to be a risk for some reason or another if you don't meet any of these contingencies, right? Deposit date. Now, deposit date is one of those things that will be facilitated by a title company. Ideally, I prefer that you guys do a wire, in which case everything's been automated through our back office, and for the most part, I try to facilitate everything for this. As soon as I get it, everybody gets it, right? Another important date is property inspection and right to cancel. This is the point where you would have 5, 7 days, up to 15 days, and you would would like to try to do as many things as possible during this period, right? First, you want to do your inspection. Ideally, you would like to do an appraisal, okay? So if you can do the appraisal before that, that'll be great. Only because now you can have a hard reason why, or no reason why actually, to cancel your contract, if necessary, okay? And again, property inspection and right to cancel, some people have this impression of like, if there's something wrong with the property, they have to give a reason why to cancel. That is incorrect. They can cancel for no reason. No reason at all, okay? Once, the second contingency date that we would have to be aware of is a loan approval period. This is, of course, if it's a financial contingency, if they're lending. You have a question?
The property inspection and the appraisal, do they give you the report immediately? I've never done any stuff.
Okay, so home inspection, typically it takes 24 hours.
Okay.
Good ones will give it to you like within 12. You know, if you do it in the morning, they'll give it to you in the afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. Again, the appraiser, they would not technically give you it unless you ask. They will give it to the owner, the buyer, right? Because the buyer is the one that has the direct contact with the lender, right? In doing so, always ask. If you know that it was scheduled, always ask. I know you scheduled the appraisal. By when would I have it? Or when can I get a copy? Okay. At which case, I would like to know that too. Okay. And then again, the other contingency date that we have following up is a loan approval. Again, if it's a cash deal, that contingency is removed. If it's a financial deal, this is the period where you have to do some work. I would do some work in the sense of pretty much following up with the mortgage lender, okay? There's a lot of pieces that go on with the mortgage lender. A lot of people don't know that. They think they're only talking to one person. It's usually 5 to 10 people in the background of that, okay? So it does take time, okay? In doing so, that's why you always got to be on top of things. And you'll see later on, how do you prevent that? It's by creating relationships with lenders and having a sense of standards where you keep, and then eventually if they don't fulfill those standards, you move on to the next lender, okay? But in doing so, be aware of this because this can be a deal breaker simply for the sake that, like say there's a denial and you don't send a denial on time, you know, there's the last day of the deadline, then they're pretty much, the contract goes fully hard. There's no ifs, buts about it. I mean, you can technically get out of it, but it's a lot more difficult, like 98% more difficult, right? And of course, the last day of the closing date, all right? The closing date, even though you might say the closing date is on the 30th and you're ready to close before, awesome. You can technically refer back to your buyer to see if it's okay. He says it's okay, talk to a listing agent, they say it's okay. Talk to a title company, can we close this day, a couple days before? It's okay. They'll talk to the lender, and then they'll try to expedite the CD, which is 3 days before the closing date. Or they'll put the closing date on the CD, right? Other dates to be aware of, which evidence insurance. Again, I never had a problem with that. Title companies are pretty quick at it, they can do it in 10 days. And if you have to do a survey, typically surveys are done mandatorily when it's a financial deal and it's a lot, right? Not a property that's a condo. And surveys typically need to be entered 15 days before closing. All right? Any questions? And feel free to ask any questions, just raise your hand. All right, next. Contingency dates, tips. This is a big one. Never waive Home 61 inspection periods for financing deals. Never. Why? Because it makes it easier for us to back out for some reason in case they don't get approved, or I'll show you reasons why it gets canceled, if any of those reasons why it gets canceled, right? In the sense of the financing aspect of it, right? Always ask for extensions before the deadlines. I try to anticipate things. If we have a sniff of maybe the client is going to take, I don't know, or the lender in this case would take maybe an extra week because they told you, oh, it's physically impossible for me to give it to you in 3 days. You're already 3 days out. Before that ends, send out the addendum for extension. Okay? It makes it easier because when you put it at the end of the day, or that stress of like 24 hours before the deadline, I need my buyer to sign it and send it to a seller who might or might not want to sign it. And at the end of the day, you would have to put in a cancellation, right? Just to save your deposit. Or you can take the risk, let your client know that this is a risk. If you want to move forward, you might lose a contingency. And it's happened before, and they take the risk and they move forward. And we eventually do close, but it's a higher risk for them, right? Two things myself as a closing manager and you as agents need to do is follow up with your mortgage loan officer. More importantly, fill the loan commitment letter, okay? So ideally the loan commitment letter will come in and there'll be contingencies. If it's a condo questionnaire that has to be fulfilled, they need taxes for 2018, 2017. Those things are things that you would get and then start facilitating, like calling your client, hey, do we have this, do we have that? And then also with the lenders, like, hey, did you send the application out? No, because you have to pay the $495. It's like, okay, you talk to your clients, like, do you have have you paid the $495 for the condo? No? Okay, great. How can we get this moving, right? Sit down, I will get into communication with this, again, through the emails that I continuously have to make sure that this runs smoothly. And of course, the other part on the other end is a title coordinator. Follow the title coordinator. Sometimes title search comes in and they need things from our buyer. You fulfill them. But a great question to ask is, not only what does my buyer need, but what does my seller need? The seller needs to move forward. Because sometimes it's something from the seller side. So then now, on top of the listing agent and yourself knowing that this is needed from the seller, you guys start putting pressure on it for them to get it. So you guys can close on time. Okay? Any questions?
Not a question.
Oh, God. Okay, give me a second.
I think more about, not a question, but more like little tips.
Go ahead,
When
yeah.
it comes down to the contingency timeframe, typically on contracts, you usually see 30 to 45-day contingency that they want to see a loan commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So the recommendation that I would suggest is if you get that loan commitment within 2 weeks of having that deal, hold on to it. Don't issue it directly to the seller's agent. Because once you issue that loan commitment, it's a solid deal. There's no ins or
It goes hard on it, yeah.
It's hard. At that point, you have no outs. So what I have a tendency of doing is I hold on to that loan commitment until it's either asked for, and I pretty much provide it the day of or a couple of days right before the due date. So that if anything comes up, you at least have a possibility of getting out.
Protecting the buyer.
Of course,
Protect your client.
protect your client.
If you're representing the buyer in this case.
Yes, and of course that is ideal. Okay. But again, you see, he's an experienced agent. He already has that moving, and he already has a commitment letter ahead of time. But yeah, if we do get ahead of time, of course, that's a strategy that most people like to use, and ideally for an investor too. I think that's another thing, because sometimes they look at another property, like, well, this other property, it's a better return on investment,
Well,
maybe.
It tends to happen, and then somebody working on a flip, and the construction costs come out to be a lot more than what they expected, and at least you have that tool that you can use to get out of it.
Definitely, that's a good tip. Any other comments or questions? And feel free to give more tips.
I
I don't know everything here, guys.
I think on the closing, you gotta give as much
to that point, I would say about maybe a little bit than half of the cells have to go into extensions.
Yeah, so what he's saying is actually
Like-
true. And typically in cash transactions, 30 days is pretty much what you want to do closing day 4. Any type of finance deal, you want to push it up to 45.
Yeah.
And give yourself that little room. Just remember that you're in control of this transaction until you don't meet that deadline. Once you have to request an extension, now at this point, your client's in jeopardy.
Right.
You know, at this point, they may impose additional fees for deemed day charges for not closing on time. You know, there's a lot of other things they can add on to, you know, to the or not even grant the extension whatsoever.
Yeah, just take the deposit,
Right.
especially if they've got a hot house and they've got somebody sitting in the wings waiting to buy it. You know, there's all kinds of problems that could happen, so he's right, give yourself as much time as possible.
45 days. I think we're gonna make it now
45
standard.
is the minimum. I say finance deal, 45 days.
The standard has been raised to 45 days. I agree on both behalves. Again, any comments, questions? All right, next slide. Hey, negotiations again. All right, now that you've got your contract, it's a soft contract more than likely. At this point, everything's been executed. There's gonna be points within the contract, moments of negotiation. All right, these are the points. After inspection, first point. This is why it is important to have a seller's disclosure. With the seller's disclosure, you can pretty much leverage, compare to what you had in your home inspection, that I put this offer down according to the seller's disclosure. This wasn't disclosed to me. I had my home inspector come in. I see that this and this is something that needs to be repaired. We're asking for a credit, okay? That's part of the leveraging of it. Now that also the seller would know, they're aware of it, they would have to disclose for the future deal if they decide to, decline it, ideally, right? In which case, that's a point of content where you can kind of have, this another moment of negotiating, right? In regards to the home inspection itself, when it comes to it, if it's aesthetics, don't sweat it, okay? We're talking about functional mechanical things. The roof has a sag, or the inside of the roof, the inside between the ceiling, the crawl space, you see a little bit of rotting. Those things of nature where it's a little bit more mechanical. Appliances, what's some other good stuff? Plumbing, eventually start flushing toilets and say, okay, this one is not flushing at all, right? Those are things that you would probably leverage in your negotiation. Not the scratch here or, the chipped door. Those are things that, they're gonna look at you and laugh at you. To be honest with you, it's gonna be hard to negotiate. And you don't wanna negotiate too much, because then now you come off as like this very needy buyer that, they're more likely not gonna close because they're asking for, pennies here. In which case, next time you come into any of these moments of negotiation, they were like, I already gave you this. And it was something very minimal, right? Another point would be post-appraisal. This is ideally when the appraisal goes in and comes out lower than what you're willing to, I guess the difference in which you're getting your loan at, right? Which ends up happening not as often nowadays, but this is again a point where you can show your appraisal, look, it appraised for this much, and it's gonna appraise for this much if you're looking for anybody to purchase it with a finance deal. I suggest we have the deal now, we can close in within the next 20 days, 25 days, all right? And we just lower the price, because you're gonna have to do it anyways for the next buyer, right? Because it is appraised what it is appraised at, if you're looking to have somebody else finance this deal. In which case, most times they'll split the difference, but at the same time, try to stay strong to that, because that leveraging aspect of it is it's a hard number. It's a number that they can see and other banks or other mortgage lenders would probably do, right? Another point of moment is confirmation of the title search. In which case you receive a title search. There are liens on the property, right? Sometimes happens. There's an option where the seller gets to go and pretty much fix the liens, or they don't want to do nothing with it and they want to just give it to the buyer. In which case you can be like, okay, you have $25,000 in liens, I'll take it, I need a $25,000 in discount in credit back. That's a way you can use it. Of course, I only suggest that when the person knows how to relieve a lien, or dispose of a lien. More than likely it's not gonna cost that much, because you would know somebody that works on liens and it can be expedited and can be actually negotiated down to a lower price. Okay? And then, of course, changing closing dates. This sometimes happens where the seller, for some reason, can't close because they need an extra month or a couple more days because they're moving out, purchasing a new house has been delayed. It's like, that sounds great. You want to change the closing date? I want to move in this date. How much is that worth for you, right? An extra $2,000, an extra $5,000. That can be another point of negotiation if you want to be more aggressive about it. And at the same time, all these moments of negotiation can also work backwards. In some sense, if you want to close it earlier or later, the seller can tell you, sure, we can close later because of, from one reason or another to the buyer, but then credit me back something else. It can work both ways, right? Any questions or advice or any tips? No? Okay, go next. All right, this is the part about preventing cancellations. Okay, so we're just gonna go over a couple hot spots of why things get canceled. This is good for you guys to know, so then to be aware about ahead of time before you put a contract out. Or maybe in what way to approach it moving forward. So the first part we're gonna talk about is the financing aspect of it, okay? What we're gonna talk about here is pretty much in regards to, I think, everything, including condos, residential, townhouses, right? To prevent cancellations, first big thing is get your client pre-approved. Sometimes they don't get pre-approved, and you guys go in there with an offer, and then they get denied, and you're like, wait, you can't afford the house? Yeah. So that's a very easy one, right? Next one. Make sure your client doesn't take on additional line of credits. This includes new leases, new cars, new credit cards, big purchases where you're going to put on a financial lease or rent, right? This messes up your debt ratio, and more importantly, it actually probably might take you out to a category where like you won't be able to approve for the loan. Make sure your client doesn't increase their debts. Again, don't take on another, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Don't purchase more than what you can actually afford. This is, of course, also before, but during the actual contract, right? Make sure your client doesn't make any large deposits into the bank accounts without having proof. Think about when you guys have your client go to a lender, it's pretty much a picture of what they have at the time. If there's a drastic change in the picture of what they have at the time, it's gonna get questioned and audited by the underwriter, and then they're gonna come back to you as like, hey, now we need more documentation of where this came from, because you told us something, and this is something else. It won't kill the deal, but it will definitely delay your deal, okay? Make sure your client doesn't withdraw large amounts of money from their bank accounts. Same thing, there's a picture of how much you have, and if you take about $10,000, $15,000 from there, now it's been readjusted. It's like, wait, I thought you had the money for the closing. Where's that money gone? They'll question that. It's a red flag for the underwriters.
Or a deposit.
For what?
Or a large deposit.
Yeah, again, the large deposit, the one before that was large deposit. It's not a big deal as long as you can justify where it came into, right? Make sure they don't change their appointment. It's happened to me before. They changed from one hospital to another hospital, so they have to do a reset with their approval 20 days into it. So that's another delay. And now they have to pretty much shows like, okay, you move from one career to another career. Do you have the sustainability to get the loan? Is this employer actually credible? So on and so on. It makes it more difficult, right? Make sure your client doesn't file their new yearly taxes before or during. It's happened to me too before. The lender said, do not file your taxes because you're going to be put in a different bracket. Right now you're in a bracket where we can give you this package of a type of loan. He filed his taxes, he was reassessed, and I think his percentage was a lot higher compared to what he was given before. It also delayed the whole process, right? Another thing for the financing aspect, and this is more towards the appraisal aspect of it, cross-reference the tax roll. You go into a house, it's 5.3. If on the tax roll it's a 4.2, the appraisal is going to give you it as a 4.2. So now the value of the actual home is going to be below what you actually purchased at, if it had an extra bathroom, an extra room. This has happened before. It's a simple thing. Cross-reference it. Because then you can come up to a lender and say, look, it's listed as this, it is this. They can kind of, have an idea, or maybe they can suggest a better process to apply for this home that's going to be a little bit different, right? Different product, in other words, right? Very important. And it's easy step that you guys can do yourself, right? And then also choose more than one bank or an experienced mortgage broker, right? People go to their favorite bank that they have their accounts in, but they don't have no comparables of rates, of service, of product, lending product, right? Or you go to a mortgage broker that doesn't have that much experience, therefore he's learning on the fly. More importantly, with this experienced mortgage broker, my opinion to that is, ideally, if the mortgage broker is here in South Florida, it's best because they know the lingo, they know the buildings, they know about the insurances, they know a little bit more than somebody from like that online loan mortgage, Rocket Mortgage, or yeah, they're working from Minnesota. They had no idea what South Florida is like, or how the market is, and what this building has, and what needs to be asked. Okay. And it also works on the other way on the bank, trying to work with a bank that, it's a little bit more, pleasant and works here. I've had, unless of course, the person lives in Canada or another country, then that being said, it's something you should be aware about, also who your client is. If say it's an international buyer, I would definitely extend it more than 45 days. Just because even the transaction is 5 days on money wires, the communication going back and forth is going to be a little bit more difficult. So that's just a little thing that you guys should be aware about, depending on the clients you work with. Now that was on any pretty much real estate property. This is a little bit more specified on condos. So condos are a little bit more difficult because it's under an umbrella. A lot more. So preventing cancellations on financing when we're talking about condos, know if the condo has what they call impaired marketability. Okay, impaired marketability is pretty much all right? So one of the things that's good to know, if your HOA is currently involved in a lawsuit, if there's litigation, they probably won't give you the loan. Okay? If there's litigation and you got to find out the amount, they might give you the loan if the amount can be covered by the insurance. Okay? So these are questions that you should ask. At which point, well, if you're working to purchase a condo, you're going to have to go to the association for application, right? That's the point. That's the point where you would ask these questions. Directly from the association or the head of the board or the management company, right? Other questions. If one owner owns more than 10% of the units in the building, you won't get a basic loan. There are other products, don't get me wrong, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. I'll hate for you guys to have a conventional loan, which is about maybe 4%, what is it, like around 10% now? A conventional loan for condos? Like a regular conventional loan, 10% down?
10%?
Yeah.
There is, you can do 10%, you could actually do 95 if it's approved.
Yeah.
95 or even 97% if it's already approved for.
Yeah, that's another thing, it should be already approved, so it makes it easier. Ideally, if you're, that's another nugget. If you work for a lender, ask them if they have a list of approved condos.
Approved lenders.
Approved lenders.
I get a list every month.
Good.
I do a lot of business with PRMG and they send me a list of condominiums that they approve through Data Browser. So when you're having a client that's looking for max financing, once they get into a low budget condominium, then at this point, that's when this list will come into play.
Exactly.
So,
And of course, there's other packages that the lenders can give you, but again, it's going to be a higher rate or more down payment, right? Another thing, if it's more than 50% of the units are behind on HOA dues, you're not going to know that. Usually the association knows that, the board of directors or whoever's on the board or the management company. If more than 50% of the units are rented, another red flag, okay? And these three are very much something that, all this would actually come in the questionnaire, mind you, okay? But these are the questions that you can ask or get beforehand, okay? Condo association has insufficient cash reserves. Condo association has an insufficient insurance coverage.
So how can a agent know?
So what I usually ask is two things. One, you can ask people that have worked the area. Put on Slack, hey, I have a client that's interested in this area or this condo. Has anybody worked in this condo building? Yes, cool, let me talk to you. ask the questions. Typically, it will come out. Also, the lender have probably closed a deal or gave a denial letter on the condo.
Here's
Right.
another simple way, when you're working and you find out the association fee is $150 for a condominium, that's a telltale sign right there that they don't have money for reserves.
Yeah.
So the board, then at that point, you can tell all they do is they approve and they just pay the basic maintenance fees with that amount. So when you
That's
start
another good
looking
one.
at somewhere around $300, $400 a month, then at that point, you feel a little more confident knowing that they're collecting reserves. So just a little pointer.
Yeah, remember the HOA fee is on MLS, so that's it's an easy access. True. Yeah, typically the leases are around 400, 350, depending how big the building is.
Anything under that, you already know that they don't have enough money for
That's right.
for coverage.
And
But looking at the agent, the monthly,
The monthly fee.
The
you take
monthly fee.
the monthly fee.
In the same vein, if you're working in buildings that are not, used buildings, where you have an office, but actually the manager is readily available, a cup of coffee or cookies will get you all of the information that you might want. We have a few agents that just simply work in an area in North Bay Village, where the buildings are not that big, they're not super established, big condo association. So he just went through all of the condo association with a box of cookies, and they spilled their guts on everything. Know exactly everything's happening. So if you are targeting a region and you want to know more about it, it goes a very, very long way. Those people tend to be treated like shit all the time. People want stuff from them, and people typically are rude to them. So if you're nice to them, they'll give you everything you want.
I believe some of you guys had calls like calling the HOA and they're super rude to you. That's why. But of course, always be polite. And the idea is that on top of this and the approval, right, they can pretty much kill your deal. Because this happened to us before where the person was not approved, and at the end of the day, we couldn't move forward. Or the person did not give us the amount of the litigation because the listing agent had a beef with the property manager, and therefore the deal actually got canceled. More importantly, it's now in litigation because the deposit was kind of exposed. And yet we did close it with another agent where the listing agent owns and lists a whole bunch of properties there, but she was able to get the amount like 2 weeks afterwards. So again, sugar goes a long way. Any questions?
Yeah. There's a lot of different reasons why it can get canceled.
Mhm.
What is the most common reason it get canceled on when there is a financing?
Cash reserves, insurance.
Yeah, so in my opinion, the cash reserves, and again, it gets repackaged. They try to, okay, now we have to consider this cash reserve. We have to find, because the lender, what they do, they create the loan and then they sell the loan to somebody else. So now it's going to be a non-qualified mortgage, and therefore you're looking at other people that are willing to take the risk. The insurance coverage, it's something, if it does happen, what we've done before is we had the actual buyer pay additional coverage. An actual, pretty much pay the difference in the coverage.
And when it's not a condo, what is the most common difficulty, most common cancellation?
According to financing? Appraisal.
Appraisal, non-inspection.
Appraisal, I think it's on the appraisal aspect because at the end of the day, the buyer is not willing to put extra cash to pay the difference, and then the seller is like, well, take it as it is because I have another buyer that might be cash, right? Or they put a higher deposit in it. So that's kind of like where it's part. I think the few that fall into because of that reason on the financing aspect.
Since appraisal is the most common issue, this is an issue particular for people who are really maxing out their credit and their cash. This is something that probably we should forewarn, something that we should already set in the expectation that if it doesn't appraise to price, then we will have to do this. So perhaps we should look at different properties. We should look at something that to be conscious of it when people are already completely maxed in their cash deposit and completely maxed in their credit line.
Yeah, I mean, you guys as professional experts, and through your experience, it's something that you would have to educate your client. They probably have already done, maybe never bought a house before or bought 1 or 2 houses, right? But what I like to, most of the time when I talk to you guys as an agent, there's always an option, right? You can move forward or you can kill the deal or cancel, right? when you move forward, explain the risk to your buyer. It's always about explaining the risk, so then now you're not liable. The agent never told me I was at risk. You tell them, now that you know the possibilities, do you want to move forward or not?
So the key thing on that, to try to prevent as much as possible the house not appraising, is in the beginning of the whole negotiation process, you're gonna present an offer price. So that's usually step one.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that helps you determine what price to offer on purchase is doing the comparables. You know, here in Miami, I say it a lot here in Miami because a lot of houses here are overpriced and significantly. So part of your negotiation tactics is look, I'm submitting an offer. It may be $50,000 less than what you would expect, but the reality is here are three comparables that pretty much show you that there hasn't been a house that sold for X, Y, Z. So based on the comparables, my purchase price is going to be comparative to what I find there. I don't want to run into problems with appraisals. My clients are not going to be dishing out $400 or $500 on an appraisal just to know very well it's going to get canceled.
Mhm.
So is your seller capable of reducing their purchase price? Are they aware what their house is actually valued at? You know, because these are the kind of things that I want to know ahead of time, and I warn my clients, because I'm not going to get myself tied up into something where it's like, I'm going to write a contract, it's a seller that's not really, it's unrealistic in what they're asking for. Your client's going to lose $400 or $500 on an appraisal. You're going to lose several weeks of time. They're going to obviously be distraught. So it's like, prevent your client from going through this. So firsthand, take a look and see, find some comparables. Is the house priced realistically to what the market's at? If so, price it accordingly. And even when I submit offers and I see that things are just completely out of price, here's the comparables that I found. This is why I'm offering you this particular this
Yeah.
price.
Numbers talking.
Yeah.
Right? And that goes back to the first part of the whole transaction when you put offering to do the comparables. A little bit on top. Comparables, I like to do them based on square footage. Of course, with other features, but you got to do apples to apples and then run it through square footage. Because then it becomes more analytical in that sense, right?
One last pointer on your condos. So
Yes.
whenever you're working with the condominiums, try to see, number one, determine what kind of credit scores that they have. If they have a credit score above 680, then they have a likelihood that they can do two loans, which is a 75-15. So as long as they can put 10% down, they could get a limited project review, get two loans, and minimize the requirements from the condominium. So the likelihood of you closing a condo is significantly higher. So when I speak to someone, I usually go, is like, can you put 25% down? You know, if they can put 25% down, perfect. I kind of, many cases they can't, but if they can, great. Then at that point, it's a limited project review. There's only 4 questions on the condo questionnaire. Is there property in litigation?
The
Jesus Christ.
percentages?
Is there does it operate, does it allow short-term rentals?
Yeah, it's a short-term rental, which means less rentals. Yeah.
And so basically, typically
Reserves.
those answers are usually no, so it flies through. At that point, it doesn't matter how many units are rented, are they past due, or do they have enough reserves? When you're putting 25% down, you're pretty much minimize the risk for the lender to finance that property.
Yeah.
So
And in regards, yeah, again, this is a full review, close to a full
that's a
review.
full review, so it's difficult to get a lot of them approved, just so you know. So typically, if you can do 75, great. If they have 10% down, do they have a credit score of 680 or better? Because at this point, they can do 2 loans and still go under the limited project review.
We're good? All right, next slide.
Any questions on that, guys? Feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to explain in more detail.
That's pretty simple. All right. Going back to permanent cancellation. Now, these are the other parts of this, which I noticed I forgot to put one part. But either way, inspections. How can you prevent it? Seller disclosure from the beginning, right? If the seller disclosure says, hey, there's a hole in the roof. You know that, hey, there's a hole in the roof, but let's not move forward with it, you know? But, I mean, it would probably be less vague than that, but seller disclosure will tell a lot, right? Also, asking follow-up questions to a listing agent. I love doing this all the time. So you would typically call and ask them, oh, how's it going? It's not, we're looking to put an offer in. I already got the seller disclosure. Ask any question on the seller disclosure. I see that this and this, or this was repaired, or there was a leak back in 2018. What was the reason for the leak? Do you happen to know? Let it go. If they say no, great. And then one question I love to ask is like, how do you see the condition of the house? and then he's let him talk. Sometimes they'll devolve and like tell he's like, oh, the condition of the house is great, this and that. If there's any concerns, like I see that the pool, you know, there's some chipped tiles, this and that. You know, have you seen anything? I mean, they probably won't tell you, but at least by asking, they'll give you a little bit more information, right? Also, this creates a sense of motivation sometimes, right? You can also get the motivation of why the seller's selling. And through asking the questions through a listing agent also puts this baseline, look, we both want to close, of course, together, right? We both want to close. I just want to, you know, prep my clients so then we have better expectations to move forward. What's known is easier for me to explain to my buyers because I want to get this close too. See, you're playing ball with them, right? Also check county records. It's going back to check cross-reference the tax roll, right? If the house says it has 1,200 square footage, and you get there, and actually on the tax records you can kind of get a plan, a sketch of the building, right? And you see a part where the back of it was considered open porch. But you get to the back of it, there's no open porch, it's an enclosed photo room, right? In which case, that's an indicator that it was probably done post, right? And it wasn't done, or wasn't done with permits, okay? So this actually allows the ability to know ahead of time that, hey, talking to your home inspector, this seems to be an additional part of the house. How do you see it, you know? It's like, well, it looks well done, or it looks like this is not up to code, it might have a problem in appraisal, right? Because now you're talking to a contractor when you talk to the home inspector, right? But you're bringing these questions up because the contractor won't more than likely know this because he won't be going through the tax records per se, okay? So always check county records. Also do a walkthrough. I mean, that's a simple thing. I mean, you guys seen so many houses, right? So you guys would know, hey, let me open up the closet and see if there's any wet spots underneath the AC. You know, look at the roof itself. Like I see the AC is on the second floor. This is right underneath the AC, and there's a wet spot there. So you probably know there's a leakage there, or there was a repair because you can see like the divot where the paint was different. You know, little things because again, you as realtors have seen so many houses in different conditions. So you can have a different eye where you can also let your client know, hey, you know, have you noticed this? Or you know, this might be something that when you talk to the home inspector to be aware about. Again, this just makes it easier in educating, creating value to your client because, again, you guys are a real estate agent and you've seen plenty of houses. Any other questions on that part of inspections?
I think I operate on the philosophy that you always gotta sell the house 2 times. You
Yes.
gotta sell it in the beginning, you gotta sell it in the inspection.
Okay.
And so, if you have that in your mind, then when things come up in the inspection, you can talk about what a great deal you got for them up front on the price. Because the seller's not always gonna cooperate.
Another thing is minimizing huge, like little things, right? It's like, hey, sometimes an inspection comes out, like this happens, I think Ted mentioned it, Maria mentioned it, where the outlets, doesn't have like the new, the permitting for the new up to code running, that thing. And it's just one of those things where like, most people are like, oh, you gotta bring an electrician in, you gotta change all this, and then it puts a sense of fear. Again, you can bring it into, reel them in a little bit, right? First, it's an outlet they can just change very simply without an electrician, 1. 2, it works, and it's been up to code in what, 2008 or 2013? The change, the coding, the permit,
The GCFI?
yeah. It was recent, to the point where like, I think about maybe 80% of the houses nowadays are not up to code. You know, it's not a big thing, you know, in that case. And again, this prevents this kind of like this fear and the stress as they read through the report. I always suggest reading the report first, and then talking to your client as they read the report to see where their mind is, and then also after you read it, you can kind of give them pointers of like things that do need to be fixed, things that can be actually negotiated, and things that can just pretty much be like, it's not a big deal. I've had a client say, oh, it's the bottom of the sink is, you know, because the tubes were like, was leaking, but it's like a little watermark. It's literally just changing the elbow, a plastic piece of elbow, and putting it correct. You know, it's not that big of a deal for most of the stuff, right?
The biggest thing on this, in my opinion, is
Mhm.
just setting up the client's expectations.
Yes.
Like right up front, out your offer is gonna be based on the conditions of the house. Now, be mindful that we're gonna do a property inspection, but understand that the property inspection is here to point out the 4 things that we don't know. We don't know the foundation, we don't know the situation of the roof, we don't know how the electrical is, and we don't know the plumbing is. Outside of that, what you see is what you get. So, submit your offer accordingly. And typically when I do this, I don't, when the property inspection comes in, it's like, hey, we ordered this, we ordered that. Okay, yeah, we have a plumbing leak or whatnot, I mean, that's something that we can request the seller to fix, or we can request a credit, et cetera, et cetera. But that way, when the inspection comes, it minimizes any kind of prolonged or any concerns that we have. Again, nothing is foolproof, but for the most part, it takes so much off. You know, them coming to you is like, oh, I didn't know about this door knob, or this door was cracked, or this window was broken, whatever the case is. So,
It's pretty much
And
great invitations to bring up this.
I agree with you 100%. And I know we're focusing on buyers right now, but when you are representing the seller, your mindset's completely opposite.
It's the other way.
Mindset is, what are you willing to do to sell this house?
Correct.
You know, and then set those expectations, and then obviously, when you're representing the buyer, in the best interest of the buyer, try for it. Why not? All right, there was a scratch on the door, they'd like you to paint it. If they say no, they say no, but at least ask for it and look for the best interest of your buyer. But you're right about setting the expectations so that when that inspection report comes, they don't think that that's a big punch list of things that are gonna be
Yes.
done by the seller, which a lot of buyers do.
And one thing I did miss putting on here, but we'll get to it, is in respect to condos. The actual condo approval, association approval, I completely forgot to put it on here. But that's another to prevent cancellation, that's one of the things that has happened before. They didn't get approved, or it got delayed, therefore they wanted to do an extension, and then had to be canceled during a contingency date, okay? The simple fact of just, from day one, figuring out who the person is that's gonna do the approval, if it's a company, if it's a board member, contact them. If you have to, go to the office, sometime within the week, ask them the questions. I have a client that's looking to purchase, first of all, what do you guys need for them to get approved? Which is something people ask you, it's like, how do you do application? No, what is it that they need to get approved? That way, if there's something that you don't, you're aware of at this point, maybe they need a 680 in Broward to get approved. Say, okay, now I know my client is a 680. Go back to your client. Do they have a 680? No, okay, now you can do it within the contingency dates, right? But more than anything, preventing it and like moving forward with it. The sooner you get the application in, the better. Application sometimes takes 30 days to get approved. Because they'll do it like every time they meet up for the monthly board meeting, right? Which sometimes happens, and then you did not know that, and then now you have to readjust your closing date, put another, extension. It's happened to us before, and that's one of the things by preventing the cancellation of those is just from the very beginning, finding out what they need to get approved and how to apply, and how long it's going to take. Okay? If at that point you know it's going to take more than what the closing date is, it's worth actually putting in an extension on the closing date. On top of that, you can also leverage, which I've done before, leverage the seller. Because at the end of the day, the seller is the one that's paying these people, right? Through the HOA. Maybe the seller has a better relationship because it's a neighbor, right? They're like, come on, do this for me, this and that. Can you expedite it instead of doing 30 days because I have to move? You can do it in 15 days. It's more fast. Because at the same time, the seller wants to close too, right? The sooner the better most of the time, right? Again, just to move forward on this, the prevention of cancellation is title only. Now, this is a little bit more difficult to prevent. You can do so much only so much with what you have in common with records. I would say, again, I shared this with you guys, all these are specific links for the specific types, right? In this case, the property appraiser is the first one. Within the property appraiser, you can actually click into taxes due. Taxes due. That would show you, it's like, oh, how they pay their taxes, right? It also shows you for the property itself, what I was talking to you before, the actual sketch of the building. You see there's an extra square footage of the building. You know, maybe it's not permitted. In which case, then you would go into building regulations board. You can search there through the actual owner's name, folio number, and address, all three of them, expedition track. And you can see if they have any open permits, okay? This link to county records actually puts you into any liens that the county might have, because maybe the person didn't mow their lawn, so they had a lien on their property because there was a fee that they didn't pay because the lawn wasn't mowed, the county had to do it, right? That would come out in county records. And of course, all these can be searched by folio number, owner's name, and address. And then code enforcement. Code enforcement is pretty much something that's pending, that hasn't gone into lien, but now you're aware of it. Okay, these are things that, again, can be checked by you guys. It's not the full throw title and lien search, but at least you can be more aware. Okay, it's happened to us a couple of times where you put the offer in and there was permitting issues, or there was depending what city or municipality, there was a didn't have the occupancy certificate of occupancy, which is something that eventually what it is simply when they do any changes to it, or for some municipalities, if they sell the house, they have to do a certificate of occupancy. And it could be because they're just going over there to reevaluate the code, which is pretty much what it is. And if there's something that's not up to code, they will first force the seller to make the changes, which means there's no clean title, which means you can't close until they do that. That can take about 2 weeks. This is a permitting issue. 2 weeks to actually 2 months, depending on what city it is and what needs to be done. Okay? And again, by knowing that, you can kind of go back and let your client aware, like, look, there's a permit issue. It might take 2 weeks or 2 months. Are you willing to wait that long for this property? Yes or no? Yes? Great. No? Okay. Yes? Okay. How can we facilitate this to go faster? And then, you talk to me and I can give some people that do permits and expedite that. Any questions on that part? Cool. Next. All right, this is the last part pretty much. Last emphasis, enhancing the buyer's experience. There's 3 ways to do it. There's 3 quadrants of this. First, it starts with yourself. You're a pro, professionalism. Second, be polite. Polite segues to respect. Polite is being on time. Saying good morning, good afternoon, thank you. It's very simple. People don't know how much it affects people's days, but it does. And it makes things easier through communication, okay? Sharp. Dress sharp and be on time. Okay? Honesty. So if honesty is pretty much saying what you say is true, and if you don't know, it's okay, you don't know, tell me you don't know, or I'll find out. Okay? Don't lie about things, because then that might roll over. Like, or even on the same spectrum, saying that you can do something or guarantee something. There's no guarantees. You can say, I'm attempting to do something. I'll see what I can do. Okay? And you be knowledgeable about the actual market, right? And that's through actually going through experience and coming here and going to other workshops, okay? And the trustworthy aspect of it is very simple. You do what you say, you say what you do, okay? When you tell somebody you're going to do something and you do it, that's something that's trustworthy. It's as simple as that, okay? Also, enhancing would be what we do. That's Home 61, right? As a non-traditional tech brokerage, we leverage our tech through client user interface. Of course, you have me to close manage a little assistance, right? To relieve you from the stress of it. And trusted partners. Trusted partners are lawyers that we work with, or title company that we work with. Pretty much most of the people on the team here, right? That we work with together. However, most agents are, when they go through transactions, start creating teams. Teams incentivized by title company that you trust, a lender that you trust, home inspector that's going to be there on time, will be there to service you, that won't scare your client away, importantly, right? In some cases, a contractor, they say the person hates the flooring, but the apartment looks great. I have a contractor that can do the flooring for you. We'll put the purchase price minus what the cost of the flooring is, and we'll have this contractor do it for you. And it makes it easier to facilitate the closing, right? An insurance person, this isn't the case when it's a financial deal and they need to get a quote so that they can put it into, I guess the cost of the C of the mortgage, and an attorney. This is only in extreme cases, but again, we provide all this to you guys through our network of people that we work with before. But again, if you start establishing those relationships with your own people, even better. Okay? Our next item is focus a little bit on this part. User, the dog user interface, okay? Now, this is something that most people don't know, but we have a user interface right now when we do closing. So when we do closing, if you notice in the back office, there's a lot of little fields that I put in. Separated documents and procedures, the contingency dates, the people that we're going to be working with, okay? As a client, this is their interface. They sign on, this is our client, cancellation. And as soon as they have closing, activate a closing question, they have a closing tab, okay? Once you click on there, they're going to get the user interface. Now, this closing is actually closed. And on top, you're going to have a little description of what each step is, okay? And more importantly, the contingency dates that each thing is, okay? In regards, as you go through the process, if you're only at the escrow deposit and an inspection yet, this will be gray. These two will be grayed out, okay? So you know what point are you at, okay? As documents come in, I upload it to the back office in its individual categories, okay? And because this is a pretty much closed file, there's a whole bunch of documents here in the category, and they get just downloaded. So they have one place where they have all the information, all the documents, instead of going through all the emails from the title company to the lender, from the one email I sent to the client directly, okay? Here you're going to have a picture of the property itself, you're going to have my contact, and if you click, because there's more to it. And there would also have agent contact, loan officer contact, and title company contact. In regards to when there's a document that's missing, it's going to show our documents. Okay? This has a number of data that's scanned. And the idea is to make it efficient. So the experience of the client becomes stressless, right? They know where they're at, they know what needs to be done, because they can go to this interface. On top of that, you're going to be slowly communicating to them in calm fashion what needs to be done. And your partners, right? The title company you're working with, the lender you're working with, right? Try to choose people that are more customer based. Because there's this kind of lag where the lender or title company, they do great mechanic, administrative, right? But when it comes to communicating to the client, it lacks. And that lack of communication could eventually will be reflected to you as an agent, because it always falls on the agent's shoulder of the customer service that you guys provide. And more importantly, I'm a closing manager, so please use me. Like, I'm here to facilitate the closing for you guys, so you guys don't stress about it. Okay? If you don't send me a closing request, I don't know what's going on. If you send me a closing request, or if you don't CC me on an email, I don't know what's going on. Okay? So anything that goes on in retrospect that an email gets sent to you and you see that I'm copied, that I should be copied in, send it to me or copy me and say, oh, thank you for sending me whatever documentation or appraisal that was under appraised. I'm copying my closing manager, please next time, CC my closing manager. So then that way we can both create a strategy to move forward. So, okay, appraisals under appraised, what can we do? Right, this is what we're going to do. Show it to a listening agent, let them know that. Got an appraised, ask for comps that you can also provide to them to say, hey, look, we told you in the beginning, this is where we got an appraised. Everybody's going to be, anybody that actually decides to, if you guys decide to put it back on the market, it's going to be the same problem. We're going to actually save your owner, your seller, 15 days, 20 days into this because you're already in a contract now. We're willing to pay ball. However, we need $5,000 in credit. Come back. We can only do half. Cool. $250. Then you talk to your buyer. And that's how you kind of leverage it a little bit, right? But again, we create a strategy for that with you guys. And then that's it. You just use me. Use this interface. Leverage Home 61. And thank you for joining us today.
I actually have,
Any questions? This is the Q&A section of everything.
I do actually have, action advice on the front where deals get canceled. It happens, it's work, but there's really two different ways it can get canceled. It can get canceled where we let the deal get to a point where there's really no way out, and then the client himself decides to cancel. Or there's a different scenario where you see, based on your experience, based on your interaction with Carlos, that this deal is not going to go through, and now your client is likely to cancel or will get into trouble
and you yourself tell him like, hey, despite the fact that I will not be getting a commission if it doesn't close, my advice to you is to cancel. By doing this, you have just created a client for life. By showing that you have your client's best interest and saying, this will be a problem for this and this reason, I advise we cancel and we find something better, that person will close with you forever from zero on. So, of course, I would rather that none of our deals cancel. We all would want to, but if we see that this is heading in the wrong direction, and sometimes it's very clear. We've seen it we've worked with Bank of America. We've seen it on different deals. If you see that this is going in the wrong direction, be the one who is proactive. Be the leader in this, because your clients will reward you for it. They will close with you the next time and the next time, because now your word has an immense value because you got their back. And so don't be passive in it. Yep,
I just want to add to that, because I had one client in mind that comes to mind that, I mean, every red flag with this property was, I mean, it couldn't have been any more in your face. First of all, it was overpriced. The appraisal came in under our agreed to price. The seller refused to do anything about it. The third bedroom, not a legal bedroom, they illegally converted a garage into a third bedroom. I kept telling my client, they're not going to lower their price. You can back out now if you want. I know you really like, well, no, it's okay. We'll put more down. We have it. Okay, listen, your daughter's not, or your guest room is not going to be a real bedroom. You can punch out a window. We already called. I called the city for them. I found out they can't punch out a real window, that room has to be converted back into a garage. She was willing to accept the risk. So you have to be a little bit careful with people have emotional attachments to properties, usually. And so, yes, you can advise and say, I don't think based on what we've discussed and what you told me you wanted and what I see is available out there, that this may be the best option for you. But ultimately, it is your decision. And I think that that's the best way to consult, is give them the power, but show them their possibilities.
Yes.
So here's option A, and this is what might happen or what could happen, and here's option B, and here's option C. Which do you think would be the best? I can give you my advice on which way I would go, but you're the one that has to live with it. So you're the one that has to make this investment, not me. So, and she ended up buying it. She ended up buying the house. She's happy. She has not converted the garage back into a garage. She's going to keep it as a fake garage, but she's willing to live with that risk because she wanted to be in that neighborhood.
But you were forthright with like, those are the red flag, here is my advice. And this is definitely, because then if it blows up, if there is a problem, you've been transparent, you've given the advice. They know that you're a trustworthy person who has their back. And that's key. If you have the trust, this is a repeat client forever and ever. And very often, more than not, if you didn't say anything and end up canceling, they're not likely to come back with you. If you've given the advice, you were forthright, you were taking the leadership role, that you are an added value, and it does cancel, they'll stay with you because they know you got your back. So the end result might be the same at the cancellation part, but the steps all after this will be very, very different because the relationship will be very different.
I think I should have put preventing cancellations and providing awareness. Because it is, I think he's right, it's on both ends, right? I tell a lot of the agents, look, JD is one of them, I'm gonna put you out there, right? He found it, he had a new home buyer, specific budget, specific area. Found a property and a floater room with, I think had a stove and a kitchen in the floater room.
Yeah, the whole efficiency was not permitted.
Not permitted. And I told him, you have two options. If she really likes it, you move forward, let them know that the risk is maybe a couple months for them to get that re-permitted, or she takes the purchase, power won't get appraised, and she would have to re-permit it or get the risk of getting fined, or you cancel now, save her the time, and find a new place. And that's it. And that's where they end up going, and they eventually they're finding a new place.
Yeah. Those efficiencies things are,
Yeah.
in my opinion, they're a nightmare because everyone I've run into have never been permitted properly or even at all. despite what the owner says or what the listing agent says. One of the things that I ran into when researching that, and it didn't occur to me before, but if their client wants to use that because they want to rent it out, I've read where they could really open themselves up to a huge liability, especially if that thing burns down, you have insurance, and it was not permitted in the first place. You can see all kinds of potential problems there that the client is opened up to. Because I can't imagine an insurance company saying, well, yeah, I'll pay the insurance on a thing that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And so I just told my client, I said, here, you gotta think about this. These are things that people normally wouldn't think about. I just think there's just way too much risk here. Especially if you wanna use it for a rental, you know, where you have somebody in there that's gonna maybe burn the place down with a stove that shouldn't be there. And then you're gonna file a claim on a place that shouldn't have been there. You know, there's just too much risk.
They're still working with you?
Yeah, we're still,
Right.
yeah, no, I mean, but even if she didn't, I have to live with myself.
Yeah.
I have to live with the fact, I would feel horrible if I pushed her into that place and then a month later, the thing burns down.
But-
Or something catastrophic happens.
The simple fact that you got her back, she will keep on working with you.
Yeah.
Not only can you live with yourself, so that's very nice, but on top of that, she gets to work
Not
with
only
you,
was
be
it
proud of it.
horrible, but had it been disclosed that you knew that and you never told her, you might have been held
Of
liable.
course, I mean, the liabilities don't end, you know, but like I said, I'd rather walk away and have peace of mind than shove a person into something like that.
It's like on the slide, honesty, trustworthiness, it pays back.
It goes a long way, guys, that part of professionalism. I mean, we are in an industry where I would say a lot of agents are not quality agents. And we try to pride ourselves to have standards and have quality agents here. So, part of it is just, pushing you guys to be aware. I mean, you guys already are, because you guys are working with us. But just to leverage that, be aware of it. That's about it. Any other questions? No? Great. All right. That concludes our workshop for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the Saturday.